What I'm discovering is that one thing God asks us to do may lead us into the next thing, and it may not make sense in the moment. So, what I was seeing as separate, distinct calls from God through the Holy Spirit may, in fact, be parts of the same call. Let's rock. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Have you ever thought to yourself, why can't I hear God speak to me? Or what does God want me to do? I'm guessing it's probably a majority of us. And that's what this week's story is about. But with a caveat. I do not believe that there is just one way that God speaks to us. I believe that God uses what He knows can get our attention. And I use the word can intentionally. God knows us better than we know ourselves because He created us. And just because a certain method can get our attention doesn't mean that we allow ourselves to be open to it. And sometimes we outright ignore it for one reason or another. So I want to share a story of how God got my attention. And this may end up being a two-parter, depending on how long I talk. And some of it you may have heard before. It's been sprinkled, throughout other episodes. But what I'm discovering is that one thing God asks us to do may lead into the next thing. And it may not make sense in the moment. So what I was seeing is separate, distinct calls from God through the Holy Spirit may in fact be part of the same call. A phrase attributed to Saint Mother Teresa starts out with, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And this is usually quoted when somebody has an abundance of troubles and trials simultaneously. But I think it applies here as well. Sometimes God's call is huge. And in His wisdom, He breaks it down for us. Similarly to what many experts teach, that, when you have a big goal, it's a lot easier when you break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks and goals. Remember that age-old question of how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. And I think that's what God has done with me. In 2022, I was recovering from major surgery, my reconstruction after breast cancer. Now, I can't say that I heard the Holy Spirit in audible words, but I had the conviction that the Holy Spirit told me I was to be a podcaster and a public speaker. My reaction was, you got the wrong gal. I was terrified of mics and the thought of people listening to me speak. It felt way too vulnerable. And that's laughable now, considering everything that I've shared on this podcast. But things started happening. Things I couldn't ignore. I landed an internship for Stephanie Gass by accident. And I have by accident, kind of in quotes, um, because it really wasn't. I had two people on Steph's team reach out to me to join their team as an intern. But it was that second attempt, that second person who reached out that got my attention and clued me in that this prompting was from God. And I actually have an affiliate with Stephanie Gass now for her course on podcasting. So if you're interested, you can learn a lot, because I really learned a lot from that internship. And God knew that I would. So when it came time for me to go through her courses on podcasting, which was the perk of that internship, the suggested microphone at that time, now that at that time, it's different now, but at that time was about $75. And also around the same time, I was gifted a gift card to Amazon. And after I purchased what I needed in the moment, I had $75 left. I don't think that was a coincidence. So I launched the Warrior Words podcast on January 16th, 2024. 2 years ago, the week that I'm airing this episode. Now let's fast forward about a year. And I really hadn't worked on the public speaking part of that calling. I mean, speaking on the podcast publicly counted, right? Not really. It is similar, but it's not the same. And I can't remember how, but I was introduced to a Catholic speaking coach, Emanuela Hall, and I attended her boot camp on, guess what? Speaking. And during that week, she said the Holy Spirit prompted her to give away access to her captivating Speakers Academy to one of the participants. Well, I participated and I did the homework the best I could. I learned a lot that week and considered it a win. I was working on the call God placed on me. But imagine my surprise when I won. But God, y'all, only God, right? I wrote what is called a signature talk. It's a 25-minute talk on a specific topic. And for me, it was beauty in suffering. I practiced that talk, refined it, and began to get comfortable with it. I was learning presentation techniques, calming techniques, warm-up techniques by working with Emanuela. I was becoming a more confident speaker. In fact, I did warm-up exercises before I turned on the mic today. And then I was invited to do a live presentation of an article I wrote for publication in April Stern's Wildfire magazine. Now, April was a guest on the show in episode 47, sharing her breast cancer story. And while it wasn't a signature talk, it was my first public speaking event. It was small, yet a big step for me. I was gaining practice, not only in my speaking, but in listening to the Holy Spirit. I had gone from balking at his suggestions, God's calling, to be obedient. Kind of like the vineyard owners' sons who are asked to go work in the vineyard in Matthew 21, verses 28 through 32. I started paying attention and praying for discernment. I started seeing God working in my life, planting seeds and bringing things to fruition. And in the background, God planted another seed. Or perhaps he was causing an earlier seed to start to germinate. A seed that would seemingly change the direction of what I was doing. Again, my word choice is intentional. I chose the word seemingly because sometimes the way we interpret changing direction is God's way of moving us to the next rung on the ladder, getting us to that next goal on the list of smaller goals that make up the huge one He has in mind for us. And with that, I'll bring this episode to a close and pick up with this germinating seed or this next rung on the ladder in another episode. But I will end with a question or challenge, as I like to do. Are you paying attention to the Holy Spirit? Or is He the forgotten member of the Holy Trinity in your life? Look for signs, seeds, or fruits of what the Holy Spirit is planting in your life. Something to think about this week. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.